A teen missing for 11 days has been found in Tennessee's Great Smoky Mountains National Park. 18-year-old Austin Bohannon was taken to the hospital. He was the subject of a massive search with hundreds of rescuers scouring the remote area. But on Tuesday, he simply walked out of the park.
Cases of people getting lost in the woods weren't unusual for Park Chief Ranger Steve Closter. With over 6,700 acres under his watch, he'd seen more than a few people wander off and struggle to find their way back. It was part of the job, but something about this one felt off. There was a piece missing. He could sense it, but couldn't quite put his finger on what. The boy had been missing for 11 days now, and each passing day made things more serious. His stepdad was somehow tangled up in it too, but the whole thing just didn't add up. Austin Bohannon was only 18, but he already had more outdoor experience than most seasoned hikers. He loved adventure and had spent plenty of time exploring the wilderness. So when he headed into the Smoky Mountains with his stepdad, he was feeling confident and ready. But this time, things went south fast. No one expected him to vanish like that. Search teams were sent out quickly, but there wasn't a single sign of him. No tracks, no gear, nothing. It was like he just disappeared. Austin wasn't a beginner when it came to the woods. He knew how to handle himself out there. That day had started like any other hike he and his stepdad Hubert had taken before. They'd explored the Great Smoky Mountains National Park before and were familiar with the trail. It didn't seem like a risky move. Sure, the trail had few markers and the trees made it easy to lose your way, but they'd done it before and felt sure of their path. It felt routine. This trip, though, had a specific purpose. They were out looking for a certain kind of plant that grew in the area. Both of them knew it wasn't exactly legal to take plants from national parks, but the roots of this one were in high demand. With health drinks and supplements on the rise, this plant's root could go for up to $600 a pound. That kind of money was hard to ignore. If they were going to pull it off, they had to be careful and quick. But near the creek, Hubert made a serious mistake. He later explained that he slipped on a wet rock by the water. Though he caught himself and didn't fall completely, his eyeglasses flew off and landed in the creek. The problem was, without them, he could barely see, and the trail ahead was full of steep, risky terrain. Moving forward without his glasses wasn't an option. Someone had to get them. Without hesitation, 18-year-old Austin jumped into the creek to help. He tried to feel around with his feet to find the lost glasses underwater. It wasn't easy. After watching him struggle for a bit, Hubert followed him in. The two splashed and searched, trying everything they could to recover the glasses. But with Hubert's vision so blurry, he couldn't tell where Austin was anymore. He assumed they were still side by side, but at some point he drifted in the wrong direction. Because he couldn't see clearly, he ended up far from his stepson. It's something he still says he deeply regrets. His poor eyesight made it hard to realize just how far he'd gone. When he finally stopped and looked around, Austin was nowhere to be seen. They had separated in their frantic search, and by the time Hubert noticed, it was too late. He called out again and again, but there was no answer. It was like Austin had just disappeared. When Hubert finally told the story to Chief Ranger Closter, the ranger wasn't convinced, and decided to take a closer look. Closter couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Why had Hubert waited 2 full days to report his stepson missing? That alone raised red flags. So Closter launched a full-scale search. But with the delay, finding fresh clues was almost impossible. They brought in trained search dogs and helicopters with infrared cameras to scan the area. Even the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency stepped in to assist. Still, nothing. As the days passed, Closter grew more frustrated. Hubert's story didn't sit right with him, and there were too many missing pieces. It had been over a week, and Austin was still lost. Closter was sure the stepfather wasn't telling him everything, and it might be the key to finally understanding what really happened. So he sat down with Hubert again, determined to get to the bottom of it. Chief Ranger Steve Closter had seen plenty of cases like this before. People getting lost in the woods wasn't rare, but this time something about the story didn't sit right with him. Hubert's version of events just didn't add up. Closter was convinced he wasn't getting the full truth. As the 1-week mark since Austin's disappearance approached, he felt the pressure building. The mountains were no place to be stranded, especially for days. All he could picture was the young man out there, cold, alone, and with no shelter. Trusting his gut, Closter went back to Hubert and asked him again to walk through the details. But Hubert stayed vague, unsure about where exactly it had all happened. That was a red flag. Why couldn't he remember something so important? Closter decided to pull him aside for a more direct talk. Almost a week had passed and time was running thin. He was more certain than ever that Hubert knew more than he was saying. At first, the conversation was calm, but as Hubert dodged questions, Closter's patience wore thin. His voice grew firmer. He couldn't help but think about what Austin might be going through out there, but he had to stay focused. Hours later, everything finally clicked. Once Closter discovered why the two had really gone into the park, things became clearer. Hubert had been nervous about admitting they were out hunting for wild ginseng, a plant that was illegal to harvest in that area. But with the truth now on the table, and the seized ginseng sitting on Closter's desk, the ranger finally had a lead. He called in the expert guides. Now that they knew what trail the pair had likely taken, they had a much better shot at narrowing the search. Given Austin's outdoor experience, Closter still held out hope. "He's young, he's in shape," the chief said, "and there's water all over out there." It gave them a reason to keep going. But if Austin was still alive, why hadn't they found him by now? 11 days had passed. In over 20 years working in and around the park, Closter had never seen a search stretch this long without results. He was starting to feel that sinking feeling. It might be time to accept the worst. Still, he made the call to send out one final round of search teams. But once again, they came back with nothing. Maybe it was over. Meanwhile, Austin was out there doing everything he could to stay alive. All the survival knowledge he'd learned over the years was now being put to the test. And it wasn't easy. Knowing that panic could be deadly, he forced himself to stay calm. Step 1, he told himself, was simple but crucial. Find higher ground. After pulling himself up a nearby ridge, Austin held out hope that he might get a cell signal. He knew it was a long shot being so deep in the wilderness, but still, it stung when he looked down and saw no bars on the screen. His heart sank. He'd wanted so badly to call his mom to let her know he was okay. But now, all he felt was helpless. By the next morning, he knew it was time for Plan B. He had to find clean water. So he climbed back down the ridge and started following the creek, letting it guide him downhill all the way to the base of the mountain. Eventually, he found water he could safely drink. But a new problem was waiting for him. He had unknowingly gone 2 days in the wrong direction. He was now even deeper in the wild than before. If he wanted any chance of being found, he'd have to turn around and head back toward the area where rescuers might be searching. But by then, Austin wasn't sure which way was the right way. Still, he knew one thing for sure: he had to keep moving. Every night, Austin hoped for just enough strength to keep going the next day. His body was getting weaker. Food had become a distant thought. He hadn't eaten anything. At first, the hunger gnawed at him constantly, but after a few days, it just stopped. His body had adjusted, but he knew he couldn't last like this forever. Back home, his mom was in pieces, holding on to hope, while hundreds of searchers combed the land and water for any sign of him. Boats patrolled the rivers and K-9 units swept the woods. But somehow, Austin always seemed just out of reach. He was either ahead of them or just behind, always moving, unknowingly dodging their paths. One day he heard the low hum of helicopters overhead, scanning the area through the thick canopy. He looked up, knowing they were searching for him, but there was no way to signal them. The trees were too dense. They couldn't see him. Then, on the 11th day, something changed. Up ahead on the river, he spotted movement, kayaks and a small boat. "Luckily, I saw a boat. A guy and his daughter," Austin said later. He waved his arms and shouted as loud as he could. The man on the boat saw him right away and knew instantly. They had just found the boy everyone had been searching for. If this story moved you, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder of just how powerful hope and determination can be. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.